Welcome, dear listener, to a gentle, soothing journey through a world long past, a tale woven to cradle your mind and guide you into a deep, restful sleep. This is your time to let go, to sink into the softness of your surroundings. Whether you're nestled beneath warm blankets, resting in a cozy chair, or simply lying wherever you feel most at peace, let the worries of the day slip away, carried off by the quiet rhythm of this story. Tonight, we'll wander through the lives of medieval peasants, exploring how they survived the coldest nights, tended their simple homes, and found warmth in the heart of winter. Each word is a step toward calm, a moment to breathe deeply and drift closer to dreams. Let's begin. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a small, snow-dusted village, tucked into a valley where the wind whispers softly through bare trees. It's a winter evening, and the sky above is a deep indigo, speckled with stars that glimmer like scattered embers. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of wood smoke and pine, and your breath forms delicate clouds as you exhale. The village is humble, a cluster of thatched cottages with walls of wattle and daub, their small windows glowing faintly with the golden light of hearth fires. You feel the chill of the night on your cheeks, but it's not harsh, just enough to make you appreciate the promise of warmth waiting ahead. You take a step forward, your feet crunching lightly on the frosted ground, and the village seems to welcome you. The path beneath you is worn smooth by countless footsteps, leading you toward a modest cottage at the edge of the settlement. Its roof is heavy with snow, but the chimney puffs steadily, sending curls of smoke into the starry sky. You pause at the door, a sturdy slab of oak, and push it open gently. The warmth inside wraps around you like a soft blanket, and the scent of burning logs mingles with the earthy aroma of straw and dried herbs hanging from the rafters. The room is simple but comforting, a single space with a packed dirt floor, a wooden table, and a fire crackling in the hearth. The peasant family lives here, and though they're not present, you can feel their presence in the small details of their home. A worn broom leans against the wall, its bristles frayed from sweeping the floor clean. A basket of turnips and onions sits in the corner, alongside a sack of barley, the staples of their winter meals. The fire is the heart of the cottage, its flames dancing over logs carefully stacked to burn long into the night. You settle onto a low stool near the hearth, letting the warmth seep into your bones, and your eyes wander over the room. The walls are thick, built to keep out the cold, and the small window is covered with a scrap of cloth to trap the heat inside. You feel your shoulders relax, your breath slowing as the fire's gentle crackle fills the silence. In a time like this, surviving the coldest nights was no small feat for peasants. Winter was a relentless guest, creeping through cracks and chilling the air. But these villagers were resourceful, their lives shaped by the rhythms of the seasons. To keep warm, they relied on the fire, tending it with care to ensure it never died out. Each morning before the sun rose, someone in the household would rise to poke the embers, adding kindling and logs to coax the flames back to life. The wood came from the nearby forest, gathered in autumn and stacked high under a lean-to beside the cottage. Every log was precious, a gift from the land, and the peasants knew to use it wisely, burning only what was needed to keep the chill at bay. You imagine the family returning home, their cloaks dusted with snow, their cheeks rosy from the cold. They gather around this very hearth, sharing a simple meal of pottage, a thick stew of barley, onions, and whatever vegetables they'd stored from the harvest. The pot hangs over the fire now, its contents simmering softly, releasing a comforting aroma that fills the room. You can almost taste the hearty broth, warm and filling, a small but vital defense against the winter's bite. The family would eat slowly, savoring each spoonful, their voices low as they shared stories or planned for the days ahead. The firelight would cast soft shadows on the walls, and for a moment the world outside would feel far away. To survive the coldest nights, the peasants had to be clever. Their homes were built with thick walls, often insulated with mud and straw, which held the heat better than stone. The thatched roof, though it might leak in a heavy rain, was layered thickly to trap warmth, and many families stuffed straw into gaps around windows and doors to keep out drafts. You notice a pile of straw in the corner of the cottage, perhaps waiting to be used for just this purpose. Some families even brought their animals inside on the coldest nights, cows, sheep, or chickens, huddling in a corner of the cottage, their body heat adding to the warmth of the room. It was practical, if not always pleasant, but it was a reminder of how closely these people lived with the land and its creatures. You rise from the stool and step closer to the fire, feeling its glow on your face. The logs shift slightly, sending a cascade of sparks up the chimney, and you imagine the countless nights this hearth has burned, a steady anchor for the family through the long winter. Bedding was another key to survival, and you notice a low wooden bed in the corner, piled with blankets made of wool and furs. These weren't luxurious, but they were heavy and warm, often shared by the whole family to conserve heat. Some peasants slept in their clothes, layering on every garment they owned to trap their body heat. You picture them curling up together, the soft rise and fall of their breathing blending with the fire's crackle, the cold night held at bay by their resourcefulness. As you sit back down, your eyes grow heavy, the warmth of the cottage lulling you into a state of calm. The village outside is quiet now, the snow falling gently, blanketing the world in silence. You imagine the peasants' daily lives, how they balanced the demands of survival with moments of quiet joy. In winter, when the fields lay dormant, they turned to other tasks, mending tools, weaving cloth, or telling stories by the fire. These stories were a kind of warmth too, binding the family together, passing down wisdom and humor through the generations. You can almost hear their voices, soft and steady, recounting tales of harvests past or legends of the forest spirits who watched over the village. The rhythm of their lives was slow, deliberate, shaped by the turning of the seasons. In autumn, they'd worked tirelessly to prepare for winter, storing grain, drying herbs, and preserving what little meat they could afford. Root cellars dug deep into the earth kept vegetables from freezing, and you imagine a trap door beneath the cottage floor, leading to a small, cool space where cabbages and turnips were carefully arranged. Every morsel was accounted for, every scrap used, whether in soups, stews, or fed to the animals. Nothing went to waste, and this careful stewardship was what carried them through the lean months. You let your gaze drift to the ceiling, where bundles of dried herbs hang from a beam, thyme, rosemary, and chamomile, their faint scents mingling with the wood smoke. These herbs weren't just for cooking, they were medicine too, brewed into teas to soothe coughs or aches during the cold months. The peasants knew the land's gifts intimately, gathering plants in summer to see them through winter's challenges. You imagine a mother teaching her child which leaves to pick, which roots to dig, her hands steady and sure as she passed down the knowledge that kept her family strong. The fire pops softly, drawing your attention back to its glow. You feel yourself sinking deeper into relaxation, the weight of the day lifting with each breath. The cottage is a cocoon of warmth, a small fortress against the cold, and you can understand why the peasants cherished these moments by the hearth. It wasn't just about physical warmth, it was about connection, about carving out a space where the world felt safe and knowable, even in the darkest months. You picture the family sitting together, perhaps mending a torn cloak or carving a wooden spoon, their hands busy but their hearts at ease. Winter nights were long, and the darkness could feel endless, but the peasants found ways to fill the hours. Some villages had a communal hall where families gathered, sharing warmth and company. You imagine stepping outside the cottage, the cold air sharp against your skin, and walking toward a larger building at the center of the village. Inside, the hall is alive with quiet chatter, the glow of a massive fire casting long shadows. Villagers sit on benches, some weaving baskets, others sharpening tools, while children play quietly in the corner, their laughter a soft counterpoint to the wind outside. These gatherings were a lifeline, a reminder that no one faced the winter alone. Back in the cottage, you settle into the stool again, letting the fire's warmth wash over you. The simplicity of this life, though harsh, has a kind of beauty, a rhythm, born of necessity and resilience. The peasants didn't have much, but they had each other, and they had the land. They knew its moods, its gifts, and its challenges, and they moved with it, not against it. You imagine the quiet pride they took in a well-tended fire, a sturdy roof, a pot of pottage that would last another day. These small victories were what sustained them, what made the coldest nights bearable. Let's wander deeper into the village, into the lives of these peasants, to understand how they wove their days together. Beyond the cottage, the village is a patchwork of small fields, now blanketed in snow, their furrows hidden until spring. In summer, these fields were alive with barley, oats, and rye, tended by hands that knew every inch of the soil. The peasants worked from dawn to dusk, plowing with oxen, sowing seeds and pulling weeds, their lives tied to the land's cycles. But in winter, the fields rested, and so did the people, turning inward to tasks that sustained them through the cold. You picture a woman sitting by the fire, her fingers deftly spinning wool into thread. The spindle twirls in her hand, a steady rhythm that matches the crackle of the flames. Wool was precious, gathered from the family's small flock of sheep, sheared in spring and carded carefully to remove tangles. The thread she spins will become cloth, woven on a simple loom in the corner of the cottage. It's slow work, but it's vital. A new cloak or blanket could mean the difference between warmth and misery on a frigid night. You imagine her humming softly, her voice blending with the fire's song, creating a melody of calm that fills the room. Nearby, a man sharpens a scythe, the blade glinting in the firelight. His hands move with practiced care, honing the edge to ensure it's ready for the next harvest. Tools were the backbone of a peasant's life, and winter was the time to repair them. You notice a small pile of tools in the corner, a hoe, a sickle, a wooden flail for threshing grain, all waiting for attention. The man's work is methodical, unhurried, each scrape of the wet stone a small act of preparation for the warmer days to come. You feel the weight of his focus, the quiet satisfaction of a task well done, and it soothes you like a steady heartbeat. The children, too, had their roles. You imagine them gathering kindling from the edge of the forest, their small hands bundled in scraps of cloth to keep out the cold. They'd return with baskets of twigs and small branches, their cheeks flushed with pride at contributing to the family's warmth. Sometimes they'd play as they worked, chasing each other through the snow or building small figures from sticks and straw. Their laughter would echo through the village, a reminder that even in the hardest times, there was room for joy. You picture them now, curled up near the fire, their eyes heavy as they listen to their mother's stories, their small bodies warm and safe. Food was another constant concern, and the peasants planned carefully to stretch their stores through the winter. You imagine the woman rising early to check the root cellar, her breath visible in the chilly air as she lifts the trapdoor. The cellar is small, its walls lined with earth, and it holds the family's treasures, sacks of grain, barrels of apples, and rows of turnips and carrots buried in sand to keep them fresh. She selects a few vegetables for the day's pottage, her hands brushing against the cool earth, and you can feel the care she takes, knowing that every choice affects how long their food will last. Back in the cottage, She chops the vegetables slowly, the rhythmic thud of her knife blending with the fire's crackle, a sound as comforting as a lullaby. The peasants also relied on the forest, a vast and sometimes mysterious place that bordered the village. In autumn, they'd gathered nuts, berries, and mushrooms, drying them to add flavor to their winter meals. You imagine a group of villagers venturing into the forest, their baskets heavy with hazelnuts and blackberries, their eyes scanning the undergrowth for edible plants. The forest was both a provider and a challenge, its paths winding and shadowed, but the peasants knew it well. They'd learned which trees yielded the best firewood, which herbs could soothe a fever, and which mushrooms were safe to eat. This knowledge was a kind of wealth passed down through generations, as vital as the crops they grew. You let your mind drift to the forest itself, imagining its quiet beauty under a blanket of snow. The trees stand tall, their branches heavy with white, and the air is still, broken only by the occasional call of an owl or the rustle of a deer moving through the underbrush. The forest feels alive, yet peaceful, a place where time slows and the world feels vast yet intimate. You picture the villagers moving through it, their steps careful, their voices low out of respect for the land. They'd leave offerings sometimes, a small bundle of herbs or a carved wooden figure, thanking the spirits they believed watched over the forest. These rituals were part of their lives, a way to honor the world that sustained them. Back in the cottage, the fire burns steadily, its warmth a constant presence. You notice a small clay pot on the table, filled with tallow and a wick, a simple candle, used sparingly to save fuel. The peasants rarely wasted light, relying on the fire for both warmth and illumination. On the coldest nights, when the wind howled and the snow piled high, they'd gather close to the hearth, their faces lit by the flickering flames. You imagine them sharing stories of the village's history, of ancestors who'd faced winters even harsher than this one, of the spring that always followed, bringing green fields and new life. These stories were a kind of hope, a reminder that the cold was temporary, that warmth would return. The rhythm of their days was shaped by the light, or the lack of it. In winter, the sun rose late and set early, leaving long hours of darkness. You imagine the family waking in the dim pre-dawn, their breath visible in the chilly air of the cottage. They'd move slowly, tending the fire, feeding the animals, and preparing a simple breakfast of bread and ale. Bread was a staple, baked in a communal oven or on a flat stone by the fire, its crust hard but its center soft and filling. Ale, too, was common, safer to drink than water, and brewed from barley grown in the village fields. You picture the family sharing a loaf, their hands breaking the bread, their voices soft as they planned the day's tasks. Clothing was another defense against the cold, and the peasants made the most of what they had. You notice a cloak hanging on a peg by the door, its wool patched but sturdy, dyed a faded brown from madder root. Most peasants owned only a few garments, tunics, hose, and cloaks for the men, long dresses and aprons for the women. These were mended again and again, each patch a testament to their thrift. On the coldest days, they'd layer everything they owned, wrapping their feet in strips of cloth if they had no shoes. You imagine the woman sewing by the fire, her needle moving steadily, repairing a tear in a child's tunic. Her work is careful, deliberate, each stitch a small. The village wasn't isolated, though it might feel that way in the depth of winter. You imagine a market day in the nearby town, a rare trip for the peasants, undertaken only when necessary. The family would bundle up, their breath steaming as they trudged through the snow, perhaps leading a cart pulled by an ox. The market was a place of wonder, with merchants selling spices, cloth, and tools, but the peasants had little coin. They'd trade what they could, eggs, wool, or a basket of apples for salt, or a new iron pot. You picture them standing at a stall, their hands red from the cold, carefully weighing their choices. The journey home would be long, but the thought of their warm cottage would keep them moving. Religion, too, played a role in their lives, offering comfort and structure. You imagine the village church, a small stone building at the center of the settlement, its bell ringing softly to call the people to prayer. On Sundays, the peasants would gather, their voices rising in hymns, their breath visible in the chilly air. The church was a place of warmth, not just from the candles, but from the sense of community, the shared belief that carried them through hard times. You picture the priest, his robes worn but clean, speaking of hope and endurance, his words a balm for weary hearts. The peasants would kneel on the cold stone floor, their heads bowed, finding strength in the rituals that anchored their lives. Winter wasn't without its joys, small though they might be. You imagine a festival, perhaps at Christmas or Candlemas, when the village came alive with light and song. The peasants would gather in the communal hall, sharing a rare feast of roasted meat and honey-sweetened bread. Children would play games, chasing each other with sticks or tossing snowballs, their laughter echoing through the night. You picture the adults dancing, their movements slow and deliberate, accompanied by a fiddle or a simple drum. These moments were fleeting, but they were cherished, a reminder that life held beauty even in the coldest months. Let's linger a little longer on these festivals, as they were a beacon of light in the long winter. Imagine the village preparing for Christmas, the air buzzing with quiet anticipation. The peasants would save what they could for this day: a bit of meat, a handful of dried fruit, or a small jar of honey, hoarded through the autumn for this moment. You picture the women of the village working together, kneading dough for special breads, their hands dusted with flour as they laughed and shared stories. The men would haul extra wood to the communal hall, ensuring the fire burned bright and warm for the celebration. The children, sensing the excitement, would dart about, helping where they could or sneaking a taste of the honey when no one was looking. On the night of the feast, the hall would glow with life. You imagine stepping inside, the warmth hitting you like a wave, the scent of roasted meat and fresh bread filling the air. The fire in the center of the hall is massive, its flames leaping high, casting a golden light over the gathered villagers. Long tables are set with simple wooden bowls and spoons, and the food, though modest by modern standards, feels like a bounty. There's pottage, thicker and richer than usual, with bits of pork or mutton stirred in. There's bread, still warm from the oven, and a rare treat of apples baked with honey. You picture the villagers passing bowls, their voices rising in song, their faces softened by the firelight. The children, too, have their place in the celebration. You imagine them gathered in a corner, playing a game with small stones or carved wooden figures, their giggles mingling with the music. Some of the older children might join the adults in a dance, their steps clumsy but joyful, learning the rhythms passed down through generations. The music comes from a single musician, perhaps an elder with a weathered fiddle, his fingers coaxing out a slow, lilting tune. You can almost hear it, the notes weaving through the air, wrapping around you like a warm blanket, pulling you deeper into the moment. After the feast, the villagers would share stories, their voices low and rhythmic, perfect for lulling you into a state of calm. You imagine an elder standing by the fire, his face lined with years of labor, telling a tale of a long-ago winter when the snow was so deep it buried the cottages to their eaves. The villagers would listen, rapt, as he described how the community came together, sharing food and firewood, digging paths through the snow to check on their neighbors. His voice is steady, unhurried, each word a step toward sleep, and you feel your own breath slowing, matching the cadence of his tale. The story shifts to a legend of the forest, the tale of a spirit who guarded the village in winter. You picture the elder describing a figure made of frost and starlight, moving silently through the trees, ensuring the animals had enough to eat and the springs didn't freeze. The peasants believed in such spirits, not out of superstition, but out of respect for the land that sustained them. They'd leave small offerings at the forest's edge, a crust of bread, a sprig of holly, hoping to keep the spirit's favor. You imagine the children listening wide-eyed, their imaginations painting pictures of this guardian, their small hands clutching their blankets as they drift closer to sleep. Back in the cottage, the fire burns low, its embers glowing softly. You imagine the family returning from the feast, their bellies full, their hearts light. They'd bank the fire carefully, piling ashes over the coals to keep them alive until morning, and settle into their shared bed. The blankets are heavy, the wool rough but warm, and you picture the family curling up together, their breaths mingling in the chilly air. The children would whisper for a moment, recounting the night's stories, but soon their voices would fade, replaced by the soft sound of sleep. You let your mind wander to the village at night, the snow falling gently, covering the paths and rooftops in a fresh layer of white. The stars above are bright, their light filtering through the cracks in the cottage walls, a reminder of the vastness of the world. The peasants knew this vastness, felt it in the long nights and the endless snow. But they also knew the comfort of their small, warm spaces. You imagine their dreams, filled with images of spring, green fields, blooming wildflowers, the warmth of the sun on their faces. These dreams were a kind of hope, a promise that carried them through the winter. Let's explore the village further, moving beyond the cottage to the other homes and lives that filled this community. You imagine walking through the snowy paths, each cottage a mirror of the one you've left, its chimney puffing smoke, its windows glowing with firelight. Each family had its own rhythm, its own way of facing the cold. In one cottage, a woman might be brewing ale, stirring a pot of fermenting barley with a wooden paddle, the yeasty scent filling the air. In another, a man might be carving a new handle for an axe, his knife moving carefully over the wood, shaping it with precision. The animals, too, were part of this world. You picture a small barn attached to one of the cottages, its walls lined with straw to keep the animals warm. The family's cow, a sturdy creature with a thick coat, chews contentedly on hay, its breath steaming in the chilly air. Chickens cluck softly in a corner, nestled in a pile of straw, their feathers fluffed to trap heat. The animals were vital to the peasants' survival, providing milk, eggs, and sometimes meat, and they were cared for with the same attention given to the family itself. You imagine a child slipping into the barn before bed, checking on the animals, perhaps sneaking a pat to the cow's warm flank. The village was a web of connections, each family linked to the others by shared work and shared struggles. You imagine a day when the snow was too deep for anyone to venture far, and the villagers worked together to clear a path to the well. They'd take turns with shovels, their hands wrapped in cloth, their laughter rising as they tossed snow at each other. The well was the heart of the village, its water cold but clean, drawn up in wooden buckets and carried carefully back to the cottages. You picture a woman balancing a bucket on her hip, her steps slow and steady, the water sloshing softly as she walks. The seasons shaped every aspect of their lives, and winter was a time of waiting, of conserving, of preparing for the work to come. You imagine the peasants dreaming of spring, of the first green shoots breaking through the soil, of the lambs born in the fields, of the long days when the sun warmed their backs as they worked. But even in winter there was beauty. You picture the village at dawn, the snow sparkling under the first light, the air so clear it feels like you could touch the stars. The peasants would pause in their work, their breath steaming, and take a moment to look at the sky, to feel the quiet wonder of the world. Let's return to the cottage, to the fire's gentle glow. You settle back onto the stool, letting the warmth wash over you, the scent of wood smoke and herbs filling your senses. The room is quiet now, the only sounds the crackle of the fire and the distant howl of the wind. You imagine the family asleep, their bodies curled together under the blankets, their dreams carrying them away from the cold. The cottage feels like a sanctuary, a small island of warmth in a sea of snow, and you feel yourself sinking deeper, your breath slowing, your mind softening. The peasants' lives were hard, but they were rich in ways that are easy to overlook. You imagine the small moments that filled their days, a child's laughter, a shared meal, a story told by the fire. These were the threads that wove their lives together that made the winter bearable. You picture the woman spinning wool, her fingers moving with a rhythm as old as the hills, her face calm and focused. You picture the man carving wood, his hands steady, his work a quiet offering to the future. You picture the children, their eyes bright with wonder, their voices soft as they whisper stories to each other. The village was a place of cycles, of work and rest, of cold and warmth. You imagine the peasants moving through their days, their lives shaped by the land and the seasons. They knew the weight of winter, the ache of cold hands and empty bellies, but they also knew the joy of a fire well tended, a meal shared, a community that held them close. You feel this knowledge settling over you, a soft weight that carries you closer to sleep. The fire burns low now, its embers glowing like tiny stars. You imagine the cottage growing quieter, the world outside fading into a soft, snowy silence. The peasants are asleep, their breaths slow and steady, their dreams filled with the promise of spring. You let your own breath slow, matching the rhythm of the fire, each exhale pulling you deeper into calm. The cottage, the village, the snow, all are part of a story that wraps around you, a lullaby of warmth and resilience. And so, dear listener, as the fire burns low and the night grows deep, let yourself sink into the softness of this moment. The cottage, the village, the stars, all are here to cradle you, to carry you gently into dreams. The cold is far away now, and all that remains is warmth, peace, and the promise of rest. Good night. Let's linger in the village, exploring the lives of its people as they navigate the winter months. You imagine walking through the snowy paths again, your feet crunching softly, the air sharp but invigorating. Each cottage you pass is a small world, its inhabitants bound by the same struggles and hopes. You pause outside another home, its walls weathered but sturdy, its chimney sending a steady stream of smoke into the sky. The door is slightly ajar, and you catch a glimpse of a woman kneading dough on a wooden table, her hands moving with a rhythm that feels timeless. The scent of baking bread drifts out, warm and comforting, and you feel yourself drawn into the scene. Inside, the cottage is much like the first, but with its own unique touches. A small shelf holds a few clay pots, their surfaces worn from years of use. A bundle of dried nettles hangs from a beam, ready to be brewed into a tea for strength during the cold months. The woman at the table hums softly, her voice blending with the crackle of the fire, and you imagine her life, her days filled with small, deliberate tasks. She might be the village baker, responsible for the communal oven, a stone structure at the edge of the village where families brought their dough to bake. You picture her tending the oven, her face flushed from the heat, her hands deftly sliding loaves in and out with a long wooden peel. Bread was more than food. It was life itself. You imagine the villagers gathering around the oven on baking days, their breath steaming in the cold air, their voices mingling as they shared news and gossip. The oven was a communal hub, a place where the village came together not just to bake, but to connect. The woman would watch the loaves carefully, knowing that a well-baked batch could mean a week of full bellies, while a mistake could mean hunger. Her skill was a gift to the village, and you imagine the quiet pride she took in her work, the way her hands knew exactly how to shape the dough, how to judge the fire's heat. You let your mind drift to the fields beyond the village, now hidden under snow but alive with memory. In spring and summer, these fields were the peasants' world, their days spent plowing, sowing, and harvesting. You picture a man guiding a wooden plow, his shoulders bent under the weight, the ox pulling steadily through the heavy soil. The work was grueling, but it was also a kind of dance, a partnership, the promise of a good harvest shimmering in the distance. In winter, though, the fields were quiet and the peasants turned to other tasks. You imagine a group of men gathered in a barn, threshing grain stored from the harvest. The flails rise and fall, the rhythmic thump echoing through the chilly air, the golden kernels separating from the chaff. The work is hard, but there's a camaraderie to it, the men joking and singing to pass the time. You picture them pausing to share a jog of ale, their laughter filling the barn, their hands dusted with flour. The grain they thresh will be ground into flour at the Lord's mill, a trip that requires a portion of the grain as payment, but it's worth it for the bread it will become. The women, too, had their winter work. You imagine a group gathered in one of the cottages, their hands busy with spinning and weaving. The loom in the corner creaks softly as a woman works the shuttle, the threads slowly forming a piece of cloth. The others spin wool, their spindles twirling, their voices low as they share stories. You picture them talking about the harvest, about a neighbor's new baby, about the strange lights they saw in the sky one night. Their work is slow, but steady. Each thread a step toward a new blanket or cloak, each moment a chance to strengthen the bonds of the community. Children played a vital role, their small hands suited to tasks like gathering kindling or feeding the animals. You imagine a group of children trudging through the snow, their arms full of sticks, their faces bright with the cold. They'd make a game of it, racing to see who could find the most, their laughter echoing through the village. Back in the cottage, they'd pile the kindling near the fire, their hands red but their hearts warm with pride. You picture a girl carefully feeding the chickens, her small hands scattering grain, her voice soft as she talks to the birds. These tasks were small, but they were part of the village's survival, each child learning the skills that would carry them into adulthood. The forest, too, was a constant presence, its resources vital to the village. You imagine a group of men setting out at dawn, their axes slung over their shoulders, their breath steaming in the cold air. They'd head to a clearing where the trees were marked for cutting, their blades biting into the wood with a steady rhythm. The work was dangerous, falling branches, slippery snow, but it was necessary. The wood they cut would keep the village warm, and they'd haul it back in sledges, their muscles aching, but their spirits high. You picture them stacking the logs carefully, knowing each one was a night of warmth, a bulwark against the cold. The forest also provided food, if you knew where to look. You imagine a woman and her daughter foraging at the edge of the woods, their baskets filling with hazelnuts and dried berries. The woman would point out the plants she knew, teaching her daughter which ones were safe, which ones could heal a cough or soothe a cut. You picture them moving slowly, their hands brushing against the snow-covered branches, their voices soft as they shared this knowledge. The forest was a teacher, a provider, and the peasants treated it with respect, never taking more than they needed, always leaving something behind as thanks. Back in the cottage, the fire burned steadily, its warmth a constant comfort. You imagine the family gathered around it, their day's work done, their hands busy with small tasks. The woman might be mending a cloak, her needle moving with a quiet rhythm, while the man carves a new spoon, the wood shavings curling at his feet. The children sit close, perhaps playing a game with small stones or listening to a story. You picture the mother telling a tale of a great wolf that roamed the forest, its eyes like stars, its howl a song of the wild. The children listen, their eyes wide, their bodies slowly relaxing as the story weaves its spell. The peasants' stories were more than entertainment. They were a way to make sense of the world. You imagine another tale, this one about a farmer who outwitted a harsh winter by sharing his last loaf of bread with a stranger, only to find his fields blessed with a bountiful harvest come spring. The story carries a lesson. Kindness brings its own rewards, but it's also a comfort, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there's hope. You feel the weight of this hope, the way it settles over the family, pulling them closer together, easing their fears. The village was full of such stories, passed down through generations, each one a thread in the tapestry of their lives. You imagine an elder by the fire, his voice low and steady, telling of a time when the river froze solid, and the villagers walked across it to trade with a neighboring settlement. The children would gasp, imagining the ice creaking underfoot, the world transformed into a strange, glittering wonderland. The elder's voice is a lullaby, each word pulling you deeper into calm, your breath slowing, your body softening. Let's pause for a moment in the communal hall where the village gathers on the coldest nights. You imagine stepping inside, the warmth hitting you like a wave, the air filled with the scent of wood smoke and roasted chestnuts. The hall is simple, its walls lined with benches, its floor packed dirt like the cottages. But it's alive with people, their voices a soft hum, their faces lit by the fire. You picture a group of women sewing, their needles flashing in the light, while the men play a game with dice carved from bone. The children cluster in a corner, their hands busy with a game of knucklebones, their laughter a bright note in the room. The hall is a place of warmth, not just from the fire, but from the sense of togetherness. You imagine a young couple sitting close, their hands brushing as they share a bowl of pottage. They're newly married, their faces shy but happy, and you can feel the quiet hope they carry, the dream of a family of their own. Nearby, an older woman watches them, her eyes soft with memory, perhaps thinking of her own youth. The village is a web of lives, each one connected, each one part of the whole. You let your mind drift to the church again, its stone walls a quiet anchor in the village. On a winter morning, you imagine the bell ringing, its sound muffled by the snow, but clear enough to call the villagers to prayer. They'd gather in their best clothes, still simple but clean and carefully mended, their breath visible in the chilly air. The priest would speak of endurance, of faith, his voice steady and calm, and you picture the villagers listening, their heads bowed, their hearts lifted. The church was a place of solace, a reminder that they were part of something larger, something that stretched beyond the snow and the cold. The seasons turned slowly, but the peasants knew how to wait. You imagine a moment in late winter when the first signs of spring appeared, a patch of green beneath the snow, a bird singing at dawn. The villagers would notice these signs, their faces brightening, their steps lighter. You picture a man standing at the edge of a field, his hand shielding his eyes as he looks for signs of growth, his heart full of hope. The winter was long, but it was not forever, and the peasants knew this, their lives built on the certainty of change. Back in the cottage, the fire burns low, its embers glowing softly. You imagine the family preparing for bed, their movements slow and deliberate. They'd check the fire one last time, piling ashes over the coals to keep them alive, and climb into their shared bed. The blankets are heavy, the air chilly but bearable, and you picture them curling up together, their breaths mingling, their bodies warm. The children might whisper for a moment, their voices soft, but soon they'd fall silent, their dreams carrying them away. You let your mind wander through the village one last time, taking in the quiet beauty of the snowy night. The cottages are dark now, their fires banked, their inhabitants asleep. The snow falls gently, covering the paths, softening the world. The stars above are bright, their light a promise of spring, of warmth, of new life. You feel this promise settling over you, a soft weight that carries you closer to sleep. The peasants' lives were simple, but they were rich in their own way. You imagine their days filled with work and love, with struggle and joy. You picture the woman spinning wool, her hands steady, her heart calm. You picture the man sharpening his tools, his focus a kind of meditation. You picture the children, their laughter a light in the darkness, their dreams full of wonder. The village is a world of its own, a place where the cold is met with warmth, where the darkness is met with light. And so, dear listener, as the fire burns low and the night grows deep, let yourself sink into the softness of this moment. The cottage, the village, the stars, all are here to cradle you, to carry you gently into dreams. The cold is far away now, and all that remains is warmth, peace, and the promise of rest. Good night. Let's wander deeper into the village, exploring the small details that made up the peasant's world. You imagine standing in the center of the settlement, the snow crunching underfoot, the air sharp with the scent of frost and pine. The cottages are scattered around you, their thatched roofs heavy with snow, their chimneys puffing steadily. You notice the small things, the way the snow piles against the walls, the faint glow of a candle in a window, the soft cluck of chickens from a nearby barn. Each detail is a piece of the village's story, a testament to the lives lived here. You approach another cottage, its door painted with a simple design of vines, perhaps a charm to bring good fortune. Inside, the air is warm, the fire burning brightly, and you see a man sitting at a table, his hands busy with a piece of leather. He's crafting a new pair of shoes, his fingers moving carefully as he stitches the thick hide. Shoes were a luxury for many peasants, and you imagine the care he takes, knowing these shoes will carry his family through the muddy spring fields. The leather is tough, cut from a hide traded at the market, and you can almost feel its weight, its strength, as he shapes it into something useful. Nearby, a woman stirs a pot over the fire, the scent of herbs rising with the steam. She's making a salve, perhaps for a child's chapped hands or a neighbor's sore muscles. You picture her crushing dried yarrow and comfrey in a small mortar, her hands steady, her movements practiced. The salve is a small act of care, a way to ease the winter's harshness, and you imagine her sharing it with the village, her basket filled with small pots to trade or give away. The peasants relied on each other, their skills and resources shared freely, a web of support that held the community together. You let your mind drift to the animals again, so vital to the village's survival. You imagine a barn at the edge of the village, its walls patched with mud and straw, its roof sagging under the snow. Inside, the air is warm with the breath of animals, a cow, a few sheep, a handful of chickens. You picture a boy tending to them, his hands small but capable as he scatters straw for bedding or refills the water trough. The animals are more than livestock. They're part of the family, their health tied to the village's survival. You imagine the boy whispering to the cow, his voice soft, his hand patting its flank, a small moment of connection in the cold. The forest remains a constant presence, its shadows stretching across the village. You imagine a group of women foraging at its edge, their baskets filling with pine cones and dried moss. The pine cones could be burned for light, their resinous scent adding to the fire's warmth, while the moss could be stuffed into mattresses or used to insulate walls. You picture the women moving carefully, their eyes scanning the snow for signs of hidden treasures, the voices low as they share stories. The forest was a place of mystery, but also of bounty, and the peasants knew how to navigate its dangers and gifts. You imagine a winter storm, the wind howling, the snow piling high against the cottages. The villagers would huddle inside, their fires burning bright, their voices soft as they told stories to pass the time. You picture a grandmother by the fire, her hands gnarled from years of work, telling a tale of a winter long ago when the wolves came closer than usual, their howls echoing through the night. The children would listen, their eyes wide, their bodies curled close to their parents. The story is a reminder of the world's wildness, but also of the village's strength, its ability to endure. The peasants' tools were another key to their survival, each one crafted and cared for with precision. You imagine a man in a corner of the cottage, his hands busy with a wooden plow, sanding it smooth to prepare for spring. The plow is simple, its blade worn but sharp, and you can feel the weight of its importance, the way it carries the promise of the next harvest. Nearby, a woman sharpens a sickle, her hands moving with care, the blade glinting in the firelight. These tools were the peasants' lifeline, and winter was the time to repair them, to ensure they were ready for the work ahead. Food preparation was an art, a careful balance of stretching limited resources. You imagine a woman in the cottage, her hands busy with a mortar and pestle, grinding dried peas into a coarse flour. She'd mix it with water and a pinch of salt, forming small cakes to bake on a hot stone by the fire. You picture the family eating these cakes, their texture rough but satisfying, paired with a thin soup made from bones and herbs. The meal is simple, but it's enough, and you can feel the gratitude in the room, the quiet joy of a shared table. The village was a place of rituals, small acts that gave shape to the days. You imagine a mother teaching her daughter to weave a basket, their hands moving together, the reeds bending under their fingers. The basket would hold grain or firewood, its tight weave a testament to their skill. You picture a father showing his son how to repair a roof, their hands working together to patch a leak with straw and mud. These moments were lessons, but they were also bonds, each task a way to pass down knowledge and love. The church remained a cornerstone of the village, its presence felt even on the coldest days. You imagine a winter evening when the villagers gather for a special service, perhaps to celebrate the feast of St. Agnes, a day of hope in the heart of winter. The church is cold, but the candles burn bright, their light casting a warm glow over the congregation. You picture the priest leading a hymn, his voice joined by the villagers, their breath visible in the chilly air. The music is simple, but powerful, a reminder of their shared faith, their shared strength. Let's linger on the children again, their energy, a bright thread in the village's tapestry. You imagine them playing in the snow, their hands red but their laughter warm. They might build a snowman, their small fingers shaping the snow, their voices rising as they argue over its shape. Or they might slide down a small hill, their cloaks flapping, their faces bright with joy. These moments were fleeting, but they were precious, a reminder that even in winter there was room for play, for lightness. The peasant's relationship with the land was deep, almost sacred. You imagine a man standing at the edge of the forest, his hand resting on a tree, his eyes scanning the horizon. He knows this land, its rhythms, its moods. He knows when the frost will come, when the first buds will appear. You picture him teaching his children to read the signs, the way the wind changes, the way the birds move. This knowledge was their inheritance, a gift as valuable as any coin. Back in the cottage, the fire burns low, its embers glowing softly. You imagine the family gathered around it, their day's work done, their hearts full. The woman might be telling a story now, her voice soft, her words weaving a tale of a hero who faced a great storm and emerged stronger. The children listen, their eyes heavy, their bodies sinking into the warmth of the blankets. You feel yourself sinking too, the story pulling you deeper, your breath slowing, your mind softening. The village is quiet now, the snow falling gently, the stars bright above. You imagine the cottages, each one a small world of warmth and resilience. The peasants sleep, their dreams filled with the promise of spring, of green fields and warm sun. You let this promise settle over you, a soft weight that carries you closer to sleep. And so, Dear listener, as the fire burns low and the night grows deep, let yourself sink into the softness of this moment. The cottage, the village, the stars, all are here to cradle you, to carry you gently into dreams. The cold is far away now, and all that remains is warmth, peace, and the promise of rest. Good night. Let's explore the village's connection to the manor, the larger estate that governed their lives. You imagine walking along a snowy path that leads away from the village toward a larger stone building in the distance. The manor house looms over the fields, its walls sturdy, its windows glowing with the light of many candles. The lord of the manor, though rarely seen, is a constant presence, his authority felt in the taxes and labor owed by the peasants. You picture the villagers trudging to the manor on certain days, their carts laden with grain or wool, their hands cold but their steps steady. They deliver their tithes to the steward, a stern man with a ledger who'd record their contributions with a careful hand. The manor was more than a place of obligation. It was also a source of protection. You imagine a time when a neighboring village faced raiders and the lord's men rode out to defend the land. The peasants would tell this story by the fire, their voices low, their words a mix of fear and gratitude. The lord's power was a double-edged sword, but it kept the village safe, and the peasants knew this, their lives tied to his rule. You picture a young man from the village, perhaps chosen to serve in the manor's guard, his chest swelling with pride as he dons a simple leather jerkin, his hand gripping a spear. The manor also had its own rhythms, its own tasks. You imagine the manor's kitchen, a bustling place where servants prepared meals for the lord's household. The peasants might contribute to this, bringing eggs or vegetables to trade for a favor or a reduction in their dues. You picture a woman from the village standing at the kitchen door, her basket heavy with turnips, her face calm as she negotiates with the cook. The manor was a world apart, but it was part of the village's life, its presence a constant reminder of the larger order that shaped their days. Back in the village, the peasants found ways to make the winter bearable, even joyful. You imagine a midwinter festival, perhaps the feast of St. Lucy, when the village came alive with light. The children would carry small candles, their faces glowing in the flickering light, their voices raised in a simple song. You picture the adults gathering in the communal hall, their hands busy with small crafts, carving wooden toys, weaving garlands of holly. The fire would burn bright, the air filled with the scent of pine and roasted apples, and you can feel the warmth of the moment, the way it lifts the villagers' spirits. The children were the heart of these festivals, their energy a spark in the cold. You imagine them playing a game of tag in the snow, their laughter echoing through the village, their cloaks flapping as they run. Or they might sit by the fire listening to an elder tell a story of a magical creature who brought light to the darkest nights. You picture their eyes wide, their hands clutching small wooden figures, their minds alive with wonder. These moments were a gift, a way to push back the darkness, to find joy in the heart of winter. The peasants' work never truly stopped, even in the quiet months. You imagine a man repairing a cart, his hands busy with hammer and nails, his breath steaming in the cold air of the barn. The cart was vital, used to haul wood or grain, and its wheels had to be strong to navigate the muddy spring paths. You picture him testing the wheel, spinning it slowly, his face creased with satisfaction as it turned smoothly. Nearby, a woman mends a fishing net, her fingers deft as she knots the twine, preparing for the day when the river thaws and the fish return. Food was always on their minds, and the peasants were masters of preservation. You imagine a woman in the cottage, her hands busy with a side of bacon, rubbing it with salt to keep it through the winter. The meat was a rare treat, saved for special days or traded for other goods. You picture her hanging it from a beam, the smoky scent mingling with the herbs, her hands careful as she ensures it's secure. The family would eat sparingly, savoring each bite, knowing it was a gift from their hard work in the warmer months. The forest continued to provide its resources a lifeline. You imagine a group of villagers gathering bark to make a simple tea, its bitter taste a reminder of the land's gifts. Or they might collect resin from pine trees, using it to seal cracks in their homes or to make torches for the darkest nights. You picture them moving through the forest, their steps careful, their eyes scanning for signs of danger or bounty. The forest was a partner, a teacher, and the peasants treated it with care, knowing their survival depended on its health. The village's animals were cared for with the same attention. You imagine a woman milking a cow, her hands steady despite the cold, the milk steaming in the chilly air. The milk was precious, used for cheese or mixed with herbs for a warm drink. You picture her churning butter, her arms moving rhythmically, the soft thud of the churn blending with the fire's crackle. The children might help, their small hands eager, their faces bright with the promise of a taste. These tasks were small, but they were part of the village's rhythm, a steady beat that carried them through the winter. The peasants' faith was a constant comfort, its rituals a way to mark the passing of time. You imagine a quiet evening when the family gathers to say a prayer, their voices soft, their hands folded. The prayer is simple, a thanks for the day's warmth, a hope for the spring to come. You picture them kneeling by the fire, the light casting soft shadows on their faces, their hearts lifted by the words. The church was a distant presence, but its teachings were close, woven into the fabric of their lives. Let's linger on the stories again, the tales that filled the long nights. You imagine an elder by the fire, his voice low, telling a story of a great frost that turned the world to crystal, its beauty both wondrous and dangerous. The villagers would listen, their hands still, their minds carried away by the words. You picture a child asking a question, her voice soft, her eyes bright with curiosity. The elder would smile, his answer gentle, pulling her deeper into the tale. These stories were a kind of magic, a way to make the winter feel less heavy, less endless. The village was a place of balance, of work and rest, of struggle and hope. You imagine a morning when the sun breaks through the clouds, its light glinting off the snow, the air filled with the promise of warmth. The peasants would pause in their work, their faces turned to the sky, their hearts lifting. You picture a woman standing at the door of her cottage, her hands shielding her eyes, her breath steaming as she smiles. The winter was long, but it was not forever, and the peasants knew this, their lives built on the certainty of change. Back in the cottage, the fire burns low, its embers glowing softly. You imagine the family asleep, their bodies curled together, their dreams filled with images of spring. The blankets are heavy, the air chilly but bearable, and you feel yourself sinking deeper, the warmth of the cottage wrapping around you. The village is quiet, the snow falling gently, the stars bright above. You let this quiet settle over you, a soft weight that carries you closer to sleep. The peasants' lives were a tapestry of small moments, each one a thread in the larger story of the village. You imagine the woman spinning wool, her hands steady, her heart calm. You imagine the man carving wood, his focus a kind of meditation. You imagine the children, their laughter a light in the darkness, their dreams full of wonder. The village is a world of its own, a place where the cold is met with warmth, where the darkness is met with light. And so, dear listener, as the fire burns low and the night grows deep, let yourself sink into the softness of this moment. The cottage, the village, the stars, all are here to cradle you, to carry you gently into dreams. The cold is far away now, and all that remains is warmth, peace, and the promise of rest. Good night.